The morning sun had barely broken the horizon, yet the harsh fluorescent lights of Falcon Ridge Air Base's surveillance room were already buzzing with the hum of electronics. Screens lined the walls like sentinels, each one flickering with live camera feeds of the sprawling compound below, the airstrips, the barracks, the perimeter fences, and the checkpoints manned by uniformed airmen who moved with mechanical precision. Sergeant Alyssa Ward sat rigid in her chair, hands poised over the keyboard, scanning the screens for anything unusual. 10 years in the Air Force had trained her eyes to catch anomalies that others would dismiss as shadows or glitches. Today, something about the convoy approaching Checkpoint 3 made her stomach knot. It wasn't the schedule, she had memorized it down to the minute. And it wasn't the trucks themselves, they were standard issue. But something about the way the lead truck moved, slow and deliberate, with its lights off in the early dawn, set off alarms in her mind. "Colonel Hayes," she said, her voice measured but tight, "I think you need to see this. The convoy heading toward Checkpoint 3, it's not on the schedule. None of the transponders match military protocol." Colonel James Hayes, a tall man in his late 50s with graying temples and a permanent crease of authority on his forehead, barely glanced up from the cup of black coffee he held. "Ward, we've got a lot of morning chatter, probably a supply mix-up. Don't overthink it." Alyssa's fingers hovered above the keyboard, tightening. She had learned long ago that overthinking in the military wasn't a fault. It was often the difference between life and death. "Sir," she pressed, urgency creeping into her tone, "if they cross the outer checkpoint." "We're not scrambling the alert teams over your hunch, Sergeant," Hayes cut her off, setting his coffee down and turning back to a folder of reports on his desk. "Trust the system, trust the schedule." Alyssa clenched her jaw. She wanted to scream, to drag him to the monitor herself, to make him see the truth that was glowing in plain sight. But she didn't. Discipline was drilled into her muscle memory. Instead, she leaned closer, eyes narrowing at the convoy on the screen. The lead truck slowed even further, hugging the curve of the perimeter road. Alyssa noticed the telltale glint of reinforced plating on the sides, a modification she had never seen on standard supply vehicles. Her chest tightened. And then, without warning, the lead truck cut its lights completely, plunging the convoy into shadow. For a heartbeat, the camera feed caught nothing but darkness. The sudden disappearance of light sent a cold chill down Alyssa's spine. "Sir," she said, almost whispering, "they've turned off their lights. That's not standard procedure. None of it is standard." Colonel Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Sergeant, do you want to explain why a convoy might turn off its lights? Maybe, just maybe, they're following protocol for low-visibility operations." Alyssa's stomach churned. "Sir, there's nothing in the schedule about this. I've checked every manifest. Something's wrong." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Ward, you're seeing shadows. If there's a problem, you'll be the first to know. Now get me the morning security report before anyone else panics." Panic? The word echoed in her mind like a drumbeat she couldn't ignore. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up data, cross-referencing GPS coordinates, running threat analysis protocols. Every metric screamed the same thing. This convoy wasn't authorized. She activated the comms line. "Ops, patch me through to Checkpoint 3. I want a full status check." Static answered her, then the voice of Lieutenant Daniels, young and green but reliable. "Ward, we're seeing the trucks too, they are moving slow, like you said. No transponder signal. What do we do?" "Hold position. Don't engage unless fired upon. Report any unusual behavior immediately," Alyssa instructed, though inside, her mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. She looked again at the screen. Shadows moved behind the trucks, figures she couldn't clearly identify, but the way they flitted suggested they were armed, highly trained, and fully aware of the base layout. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She had been in tense situations before, but this had a different smell, a cold, metallic scent of something catastrophic about to unfold. Colonel Hayes's voice broke her focus. "Ward, did you get the report yet?" She turned to him, frustration flaring. "Sir, it's not a report I need. You need to listen. If those trucks pass the checkpoint without clearance, we're looking at a breach of the inner perimeter. And if they're armed, it's—" A low rumble interrupted her sentence. The first subtle tremor of an explosion shook the far end of the base. Papers fluttered, lights flickered, and a deep vibration ran through the floor. Alyssa's heart slammed against her ribs. "Sir," she shouted, pointing at the monitor, "they've—" But Hayes was already on his feet, the color draining from his face as the surveillance screens erupted in chaos. On one monitor, the lead truck exploded in a fireball that lit the entire checkpoint like a torch. Smoke and debris flew into the morning sky, and alarms screamed across the base. "Full lockdown now," Hayes barked, but his command came too late. Alyssa's instincts kicked in. She grabbed her headset. "All units, move to defensive positions, secure the research labs, lock down the perimeters, engage if necessary." The room erupted in controlled chaos. Officers sprinted to radios, technicians scrambled to reroute cameras, and Alyssa felt a surge of adrenaline that pushed past fear. She moved toward the armory, dragging a small cart of tactical gear, her mind scanning possibilities. How many attackers? How heavily armed? Were there explosives planted inside the base? The smoke billowed in from the outer gate, curling through the corridors of Falcon Ridge like a serpent. Every second, the threat pressed closer, like the tightening grip of a predator closing in on its prey. Alyssa's eyes darted to the clock. 06:14, just 20 minutes since dawn, and already Falcon Ridge was under siege. She thought back to that split second before the convoy arrived, when she had warned Hayes. The cold punch of frustration hit her. If he had just listened, just authorized a perimeter check or even a simple lockdown, the base might have been ready. Lives might have been spared. But now, the walls themselves seemed to vibrate with the consequences of ignored warnings. She heard footsteps behind her, Lieutenant Daniels and a small security team, weapons drawn, eyes wide with panic. "Sergeant, the outer fences, multiple breaches. They're moving faster than we thought." Alyssa's pulse raced. She activated her radio and keyed it to the entire base. "All units, this is Ward. Hostile convoy at checkpoint 3. Repeat, hostile convoy at checkpoint 3. Engage only if necessary. Contain all personnel in secure zones." Her voice echoed off the concrete walls, bouncing back at her like the echo of impending disaster. And then she noticed it. The lead truck now moving with terrifying precision, veering away from the checkpoints toward the research wing. Her heart dropped. The prototype, the classified technology, the very reason she had been stationed at Falcon Ridge for the past 5 years. She turned to Daniels. "They're after the labs if they get the prototype." Daniels swallowed hard. "We can't let that happen." "No," Alyssa said, jaw tight. "We won't move." But as they ran down the corridor toward the armory, she couldn't shake the feeling that every step they took was on the edge of a knife. One wrong turn, one miscalculation, and everything would burn. Alyssa Ward, calm, precise, disciplined, had never felt more alive or more terrified. Outside, the convoy disappeared behind the dust and smoke, leaving a trail of chaos that stretched across the perimeter. And somewhere, in the early morning light that barely touched the scorched ground, someone was watching her every move. She didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The warning had been ignored, and the base was about to pay the price. The morning calm had been ripped to shreds. Smoke curled into the sky from checkpoint 3, and the alarms blared like a chorus of metal shrieks. The fireball had thrown shards of steel and concrete across the tarmac, leaving jagged craters where calm had existed moments before. Sergeant Alyssa Ward sprinted down the hallways of Falcon Ridge Air Base, tactical vest heavy on her shoulders, radio crackling incessantly. Her eyes darted from the monitor screens to the physical hallways she had traversed 100 times before. Each corridor now seemed like a trap, every shadow a potential threat. The first radio calls were frantic, nearly indecipherable through the static. Breach, unknown hostiles, armed, multiple casualties. Secure the barracks, lock all exits. Engineering wing compromised. Repeat, compromised. Alyssa's heart pounded as she absorbed the reports. The convoy had not just breached the outer checkpoint. They were moving deeper into the base, faster than anyone had anticipated. And their movements suggested training, precision, and lethal intent. Colonel Hayes appeared at the end of the hallway, coughing from the smoke that had begun to infiltrate even the command center. His face, usually stern and confident, was now pale and taut. "Ward," he started, voice hoarse, "we need to." "Containment first," she interrupted, spinning to the nearest tactical map. She traced the convoy's path with her finger. "The attackers are moving toward the research labs. If they reach the prototype, the consequences won't be contained to the base. This isn't just sabotage, it's strategic." Hayes's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. I didn't think." "Sir," Alyssa snapped, "this isn't the time for regret. Orders. Now. We mobilize everyone, block the corridors, lock every lab. No one moves without my clearance." The colonel hesitated for a fraction of a second. That hesitation could cost lives. He opened his mouth to argue, but a second explosion silenced him. The building shook violently, dust and debris falling from the ceiling. A metallic screech echoed through the hallways as reinforced doors buckled under the force of another breach. Somewhere, a siren began a high-pitched, screaming whine, an emergency evacuation signal, but the order would never reach everyone in time. Alyssa grabbed her headset and keyed the mic to all security personnel. Her voice cut through the chaos, firm and commanding. "All units, defensive positions. Lock down corridors Delta through Zeta. Repeat, lock down all corridors from Delta through Zeta. Engage only if fired upon." Her own squad, small but highly trained, fell in line behind her. Lieutenant Daniels ran beside her, eyes wide with adrenaline. "Ward, they're not just moving, they're clearing buildings as they go. Small arms, heavy equipment. Whoever they are, they know the base layout." "They have an inside map," Alyssa muttered under her breath. Her mind raced. Only someone with access to top security clearance would know exactly where to go and how to avoid detection. She reached the armory first, yanking open the reinforced steel door and slamming it behind her. Inside, weapons glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights, M4s, sidearms, grenades, and tactical gear. She grabbed her rifle and checked her ammunition, every magazine loaded, every safety check confirmed. Ruiz, one of her team, jogged in after her, face streaked with sweat. "Ward, we're going to need more than rifles. That convoy, they've got armor." "I know," Alyssa said tersely. She grabbed a few breaching charges and flashbangs, stuffing them into her vest. "We need to buy time until reinforcements arrive. If they get to the prototype first, all our lives will be secondary." Outside, the sounds of battle escalated. Gunfire, explosions, and the deafening roar of vehicle engines mixed with alarms and the frantic shouts of terrified personnel. Smoke filled the air so thickly that even a few feet ahead became a blur. Alyssa realized the base had transformed overnight from a disciplined fortress into a war zone. "Sir," Daniels called through the radio, "outer fence line is compromised. They've breached the perimeter entirely. Multiple intruders heading to the research labs. ETA, less than 5 minutes." Alyssa's chest tightened. She glanced at Colonel Hayes, who was now standing frozen, mouth slightly open. "You need to authorize my plan," she said. "Ward, your plan," Hayes stammered. "Yes, sir," she said, tone sharp. "We can't wait for official reinforcements. If we don't intercept them at the research wing, the prototype is gone before anyone can stop them. I need full tactical autonomy. Your orders now." He swallowed hard, eyes darting toward the burning checkpoint visible from the shattered window. "Do it, but be careful, Sergeant. Too many lives are already." "No time for caution," she cut him off. "There's never enough time." She sprinted down the hallways, leading her team toward the research labs. Around every corner, shadows moved, punctuated by flashes of gunfire and distant explosions. The smell of smoke, metal, and burning concrete filled her lungs. The adrenaline coursing through her veins made her feel both invincible and dangerously aware of her mortality. As they approached the engineering corridor, Alyssa motioned for her team to halt. Through the smoke, she could see the silhouette of the convoy, 3 trucks, surrounded by armed figures, moving with precision toward the inner gates. "They're splitting up," she muttered. 2 toward the labs, 1 to create a diversion near the barracks. Ruiz's face tightened. "So we take the labs and the barracks are." Alyssa shook her head. "Collateral damage, we stop the primary threat, that's the priority." She signaled to Daniels, who nodded grimly. Together they moved silently, rifles raised, toward the shadowy figures ahead. Each step was calculated, each breath controlled. Their hearts pounded, but their training kept their hands steady. Then came the first gunfire exchange. The shadows ahead erupted in a storm of bullets, some ricocheting off walls, some tearing into the floor near Alyssa's boots. She returned fire instinctively, her rifle barking in bursts as she advanced with precision. The attackers were skilled, moving methodically, using every piece of cover available. But Alyssa's team had the advantage of knowledge. They knew the hallways, the blind spots, the choke points. Alyssa dove behind a reinforced console as a round smashed into the wall beside her. The sparks rained down, briefly illuminating the darkened corridor. She could see the terrified faces of trapped airmen peeking from rooms along the hallway. "Move them," she shouted over the gunfire. "Get them to secure rooms, quick." Daniels and Ruiz obeyed, herding the civilians toward safe zones. Alyssa returned fire, then ducked behind cover again. Her adrenaline was a roaring river, her focus razor-sharp. And then the sound came, a metallic clang echoing down the hallway, heavy, deliberate. Her gut told her instantly, the vault door, the secure chamber containing the prototype. Her blood ran cold. They were already inside. "Lieutenant," she hissed, "vault door breach imminent. We intercept or it's over, now." They advanced carefully, clearing each corner, checking every shadow. The hallway ahead was thick with smoke, flashing with intermittent fires. The sound of shouting, gunfire, and explosions was a constant drumbeat of chaos. Alyssa pressed forward, heart hammering, feeling the weight of responsibility crush her chest. Lives, secrets, and possibly national security rested on her shoulders. One misstep could be catastrophic. Ahead, she could see the shadowy figures manipulating the vault locks. She counted 4, highly trained, armed, and ruthless. She swallowed hard, preparing to engage. She raised her rifle, finger tightening on the trigger. And then she heard a voice, low, cold, and familiar. "Sergeant Ward, you're exactly where we hoped you'd be." Her stomach dropped, that voice. She froze, pulse racing, eyes narrowing through the smoke. Her instincts screamed the impossible truth. The enemy inside the vault wasn't just anyone. They were someone she knew, someone she thought was gone. The firefight wasn't over. It was about to escalate into something far more dangerous, something personal. And as she steadied her breathing, the shadows around the vault seemed to shift with a sinister intelligence, like predators circling a cornered prey. Alyssa knew, deep down, that whatever happened in the next few minutes would change the base forever. The warning had been ignored. The breach had begun. And the nightmare had only just started. The air in the hallway outside the vault was thick with smoke, heat, and the acrid scent of burning electronics. Sparks from scorched wires flickered across the walls, illuminating the terrified faces of trapped airmen and the determined expressions of Alyssa Ward's team. Every second stretched into an eternity. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Alyssa crouched behind a toppled console, rifle pressed to her shoulder, eyes scanning for the attackers' positions. She could see the shadows of their figures moving with purpose, their movements too coordinated for mere thieves. Someone with inside knowledge was guiding them. And then she heard it again, the voice. Sergeant Ward's so predictable. Her pulse jumped. The voice was unmistakable. Major Ryland Shaw, her stomach churned. He had been declared missing in action 8 months ago after a convoy attack overseas, presumed dead, buried in reports, and now he was here. Alyssa's mind raced. He wasn't just back, he was orchestrating the breach. Her fingers tightened around her rifle. "He's the inside man," she whispered to Daniels, who crouched beside her, jaw tight. Daniels' eyes widened. "That explains the vault, the pathways, everything. But how is he alive? He was gone." "Doesn't matter," Alyssa hissed. "Right now we stop him. Priority 1 prototype." She signaled for her team to move forward, keeping low, using the debris and broken consoles as cover. The vault loomed ahead, its reinforced door twisted slightly, pried open with skillful precision. Sparks and smoke spilled from the edges. The prototype, the classified energy detection array, was still inside, glowing faintly under the flickering lights. Its pulse seemed almost alive, a heartbeat of danger. Alyssa's mind flicked to the countless simulations she had run during drills. She knew how this tech could devastate the base, national security, and possibly civilian populations if weaponized or stolen. Every instinct screamed at her. She had to act fast. She whispered to Ruiz, "We split. I engage him directly. You secure the device." Ruiz nodded grimly, clutching his rifle and moving like a shadow along the side wall. Alyssa stepped into the corridor leading to the vault. Every step echoed, magnified by the hollow hallway. The faint glow of the prototype's casing reflected on the polished concrete floor. Then she saw him. Ryland Shaw stood beside the prototype, his eyes hollow but burning with an almost fanatical intensity. He didn't move toward the device. He didn't seem surprised to see her. Instead, he smiled faintly, a predator acknowledging its prey. "Major," Alyssa said, disbelief cutting through the smoke. "You should have stayed out of this, Sergeant," he said softly, almost conversationally. "Some things can't be stopped." Her grip on the rifle tightened. "Why, Ryland? Why betray the base? Why everyone here?" He shrugged almost casually. "Betrayal implies choice. I'm just following orders, higher orders." Her stomach sank. Orders. This wasn't a personal grudge. It was larger than any of them. Someone with ultimate power wanted this prototype gone, and Shaw was their agent. "Ruiz," she whispered, "get the prototype, now." Ruiz sprinted toward the device, careful to avoid the trip wires Shaw had set. Alyssa moved to intercept Shaw, rifle trained on him. But before she could fire, Shaw's men emerged from the shadows behind him, 3 more highly trained soldiers, armed and dangerous. Bullets tore through the hallway. Sparks flew as rounds ricocheted off walls. Alyssa dove behind an overturned cabinet, returning fire, precision bursts ripping through the chaos. Daniels flanked her, covering her 6. The firefight was brutal, echoing through the building like thunder. And then it happened. A loud metallic snap. One of the attackers had triggered an improvised explosive near the vault door. The hallway shook violently, pieces of concrete and wire falling like rain. The explosion threw Alyssa off her feet, scraping her shoulder against debris. Pain shot through her arm, but adrenaline kept her moving. Shaw's eyes flicked toward her, calculating, almost amused. "You've always been stubborn, Alyssa, but some things can't be stopped." Alyssa scrambled to her feet, ignoring the burning pain in her arm. "We'll see about that." She fired again, forcing Shaw to duck. The room erupted into chaos, smoke, fire, gunfire, screams, and the unmistakable, relentless pulse of the prototype. Through the haze, she saw Ruiz grappling with the device. Sparks flew, wires fraying dangerously. The pulse of energy was growing stronger, threatening to overload. She realized with horror, if it went critical, the prototype could explode, leveling the entire wing. She yelled, "Ruiz, stabilize it. Don't let it overload." He struggled with the wiring, sweat and blood on his face, hands shaking under the pressure. "It's unstable. Too much damage." Alyssa's mind raced. She had one option: engage Shaw before he can reach it. She sprinted, dodging rounds, flipping over debris, and landed shoulder first into the nearest attacker. He went down with a grunt, leaving her a clear line to Shaw barely. Shaw raised his weapon, taking aim. "You should have stayed out of this," he repeated, firing. The bullet tore past her shoulder, knocking her down but not stopping her momentum. She rolled, leaping toward him, rifle swinging. They collided in a brutal, chaotic struggle. Metal clashed, boots skidding across slick, shattered tiles. Shaw's strength was formidable, but Alyssa's training, agility, and sheer determination matched him. "You can't win this, Ward," he hissed, grappling her arm. "Maybe not," she growled, wrenching free, "but I can stop you from leaving with it." Behind her, Ruiz finally stabilized the prototype with a makeshift containment procedure, halting the immediate threat of detonation. Sparks flared, lights flickered, but the device's pulse slowed just enough. Shaw froze, realization dawning. He was losing control. Alyssa pressed forward, shoving him toward the vault's interior wall. He stumbled back, firing blindly. She rolled aside, avoiding the round, and wrestled him to the ground. His weapon skidded across the floor. For a moment, it seemed like she had the upper hand. But then she froze. Through the shattered window of the hallway, she saw the outer perimeter burning, explosions cascading toward the barracks, alarms blaring like hellish chimes. She realized the attackers had anticipated her every move. Falcon Ridge wasn't just under siege inside, it was collapsing from the outside in. Her chest tightened. Her mind screamed warnings. They had split forces. While she fought Shaw, the other teams were moving through the base, sabotaging defenses, clearing rooms, taking hostages. The weight of responsibility crushed her for a moment. Every decision she made now had consequences she couldn't control. Lives, security, national defense, everything depended on the next few seconds. Shaw grinned, blood streaking his face. "Even if you stop me, they win. You're too late, Sergeant, too late for everyone here." Alyssa's eyes burned with determination. She rose to her knees, rifle leveled at him. "I don't care if it's too late. I'll stop you anyway." He smirked, brave, foolish, predictable. And then the ground shook. Another explosion, this one closer inside the building. Dust, fire, and debris filled the air. They both coughed, fighting for breath. Alyssa realized something chilling. This was Shaw's plan all along. The prototype was bait. The explosions were distractions. Every move she made had been anticipated. But she didn't hesitate. Adrenaline surged. She kicked the weapon away, forcing Shaw backward. He stumbled and she pressed the advantage, pinning him against the wall. "Where's the backup?" she demanded through gritted teeth. "Who's giving the orders?" Shaw laughed, bitter, cold. "You'll never know. By the time you do, it will be too late. The first mistake was trusting your chain of command." Her stomach sank. He was right. The first mistake wasn't hers, it was Colonel Hayes. Ignoring her warning, hesitating to act. That hesitation had allowed Shaw to infiltrate the base and execute a plan that now threatened everyone. Alyssa's grip on her rifle tightened. She had no time for regret, only action. She shoved Shaw toward the vault once again. "It ends now," she growled. The hallway erupted in another round of explosions. Sparks, fire, and gunfire blurred around them. Alyssa knew this battle would cost her everything, her strength, her safety, possibly her life, but failure was not an option. Because if she didn't stop Shaw now, the prototype, the base, the lives of every airman inside Falcon Ridge would be gone. And there would be no one left to warn anyone next time. The hallway smelled of smoke, metal, and something far more sinister, fear. Every breath Alyssa Ward took burned her lungs, and every step she made threatened to crumble the floor beneath her. The building had become a labyrinth of chaos, broken lights, scattered debris, flickering monitors, and the constant, almost deafening, pulse of alarms echoing through Falcon Ridge. Behind her, Lieutenant Daniels and Ruiz flanked her, weapons raised, eyes scanning the shadows for movement. The three airmen they had rescued earlier were huddled against the wall, pale and shaking, but alive. They clutched each other, terrified, their wide eyes darting toward every flickering shadow, every spark from damaged wires. Alyssa's own heart was hammering, each beat a drum of urgency. They were close. Shaw's men were inside the engineering wing, and every second the attackers moved closer meant lives could be lost. "Ward," Daniels whispered, voice tight, "we've got multiple hostiles ahead. Small arms, possibly explosives. They're moving methodically, almost surgical." "I know," Alyssa muttered, scanning the corridor. The faint orange glow of fire from damaged ceiling lights reflected off the walls, turning every shadow into a potential threat. Sparks from a damaged conduit showered down in irregular bursts, and somewhere in the distance, a structural beam groaned under the heat. Ahead, the vault door, already twisted open, throbbed with the faint hum of the prototype's pulse. Alyssa's stomach dropped. Shaw's men were inside and the prototype was vulnerable. They couldn't let him escape with it. "Everyone," she said sharply, her voice cutting through the crackle of radios and the echo of distant explosions. "We move now. Cover each other. Don't hesitate. If the prototype leaves this wing, all of us are dead." They advanced slowly, the air thick with tension. Every step Alyssa took was deliberate, training and instinct guiding her. Yet, despite her focus, the chaos outside the corridor continued to escalate. Explosions rocked the outer perimeter, alarms blared, and the base, normally a picture of precision and control, was unraveling into disorder. The first confrontation came suddenly. A squad of Shaw's men emerged from a smoke-filled side hallway, weapons raised, moving in a tight, coordinated formation. Bullets tore into the floor and walls around Alyssa's team. She dove behind an overturned metal cabinet, returning fire with controlled bursts. Sparks erupted as rounds ricocheted off nearby steel lockers. Daniels and Ruiz moved with her, providing cover and neutralizing two of the attackers in rapid succession. "Go, move up the hall," Alyssa shouted, adrenaline fueling her limbs. They ran, vaulting over debris, ducking under hanging wires, and weaving through smoke and fire. The heat was oppressive, but there was no time to pause. Every second wasted was a second Shaw could exploit. Then Alyssa saw them, two hostiles prying open the reinforced doors of an auxiliary lab. Inside, they were rummaging through sensitive equipment, clearly searching for anything related to the prototype. Her stomach churned. They were methodical, efficient, precise, like a well-oiled machine of destruction. "Daniels, Ruiz, the lab," she shouted. "Intercept them, stop them now." The firefight intensified. Rounds pinged off walls, sending shards of concrete scattering. A burst from Alyssa's rifle took down one of the men, but the other returned fire, grazing Daniels' arm. He gritted his teeth, firing back with deadly accuracy, and the second man went down. But Alyssa knew that was only the beginning. Shaw had planned this meticulously. While they were busy in the labs, other teams were likely moving through the base, creating chaos, sabotaging defenses, taking hostages. Suddenly, a heavy metallic clang echoed from the main vault. Alyssa froze mid-step. The sound was unmistakable. The vault door was moving again. Shaw, or someone working under him. "Shaw's inside," she whispered, eyes narrowing. "We need to get there now." They turned the corner, only to be met with another wave of attackers. This group was different, armed with heavier rifles, and one of them carried a small device that pulsed faintly with light. Alyssa's stomach sank. Explosives. Bullets tore into the walls, igniting fires that snaked up the edges of the ceiling. The heat was intense, forcing them to duck and weave, but Alyssa pressed on, her mind focused solely on the vault. Every second counted. Every hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. They reached a junction where the corridor split into 3 paths, each thick with smoke. Alyssa paused, evaluating. The left path led to the auxiliary labs, already partially compromised. The center led directly to the vault. The right path, she wasn't sure, but something about it felt wrong. "Center," she commanded. "Daniels, Ruiz, cover me." We pushed straight to the vault. They moved with precision, ducking under fire and diving behind obstacles. Sparks and debris rained down around them, and the faint pulse of the prototype seemed to thrum through the floor, almost like a heartbeat of danger. As they neared the vault, Alyssa spotted movement. Shaw's men were inside, working frantically to extract the prototype from its containment unit. The pulse of the device was increasing, glowing brighter with every second. Sparks flew as wiring became exposed. One misstep, one wrong touch, and the entire building could be leveled. "Ruiz," Alyssa yelled, "contain the device now." Ruiz moved forward, improvising with the damaged wiring to stabilize the prototype, but the pulse was erratic, threatening to overload. Sweat poured down his face, hands shaking under the strain. Shaw appeared suddenly at the vault entrance, weapon raised. Alyssa dove to the side, rolling over debris, and leveled her rifle. He fired blindly, forcing her to duck again. "You're too late," he snarled. "Even if you stop me here, it's already done. The first mistake was trusting your chain of command." Alyssa's chest tightened. He was right. The first mistake hadn't been hers, it was Colonel Hayes. Ignoring her warning, hesitating to act. That delay had allowed Shaw to infiltrate the base and execute a plan that now threatened everything. But she didn't hesitate. Adrenaline surged through her veins. She lunged, shoving Shaw back against the wall, forcing him to drop his weapon. Sparks flew as the device in Ruiz's hands flared dangerously. The pulse grew brighter, almost blinding, illuminating the hallway in strobing orange light. Shaw struggled, grappling with her. "You can't stop this, Ward. Even if you win, it's too late." Alyssa's jaw clenched. "Maybe, but I'll make sure it ends here." She kicked him away, giving Ruiz enough room to stabilize the device fully. The pulse dimmed slightly. The immediate threat of detonation temporarily halted, but only for a moment. Through the smoke, Alyssa glimpsed the destruction around them. Shattered ceilings, scorched walls, wounded personnel, and fires burning out of control. Falcon Ridge had become a battlefield in minutes, and she knew the fight was far from over. Another explosion rocked the corridor, sending debris flying. The ceiling above groaned, metal beams buckling under the heat. Alyssa threw herself to the ground, shielding the rescued airmen behind her. "Move," she shouted. "We can't stay here." Daniels and Ruiz helped the civilians to their feet. Together, they pressed forward, pushing through smoke, fire, and gunfire. The vault, the prototype, Shaw's men, they were all in the center of a perfect storm of chaos. Alyssa's mind raced. They had only seconds to act. One wrong move and the entire wing could collapse. One hesitation and lives would be lost. She raised her rifle again, scanning the shadows. Somewhere in the smoke, Shaw was regrouping and his men were reorganizing. She knew the confrontation wasn't over, not even close. But for a brief, fleeting moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Ruiz had stabilized the prototype. The immediate danger of detonation was halted. Yet the pulse of the device still thrummed faintly, like a heartbeat counting down to disaster. Alyssa knew the next steps would be even more dangerous. Shaw would not surrender, and the remaining attackers would be desperate. Falcon Ridge was far from safe. And somewhere beyond the flames and smoke, she could sense it, the true scale of the breach. What had begun as a single convoy attack was spiraling into something far larger, far deadlier. She swallowed hard, adrenaline and fear coursing through her veins. The battle had only just begun. Every corner of the hallway seemed to hum with tension. Every shadow was a threat. Every second brought the possibility of catastrophe. Alyssa Ward straightened, gripping her rifle. Her eyes narrowed, jaw set. The first casualties had already fallen. The base was burning. And the nightmare inside Falcon Ridge was far from over. The hallway was a furnace of smoke, fire, and chaos. Sparks rained from exposed wiring, mingling with the acrid smell of burning insulation. Every surface seemed unstable, threatening to collapse under the heat and force of the previous explosions. Alyssa Ward's boots scraped against shattered tiles as she pressed forward, guiding the terrified airmen toward temporary safety zones. But her eyes remained fixed on the vault, on the glowing pulse of the prototype and the shadowy figure who had returned from death itself, Major Ryland Shaw. She couldn't tear her gaze away. It wasn't just the breach. It was the man she had once trusted, the comrade she had fought beside in missions that had tested her courage and her morality. The Major's presence was a living proof that the rules of war of trust had been rewritten overnight. "Ward," Daniels panted, scanning the smoke-filled corridor, he's still in there. And he's moving the prototype." Alyssa clenched her jaw. "We stop him now or it's gone. The containment procedure only buys us a few seconds. He'll finish what he started if we don't act fast." They approached the vault cautiously. Shaw's men, a small strike team, had already begun disassembling the containment unit, wires hanging loose, sparks dancing dangerously. And there he was, Shaw, alive, calculating, almost calm in the middle of this inferno. The glow from the prototype reflected off his face, highlighting the hollow intensity of his eyes. Alyssa's throat tightened. "Major, why?" Her voice carried over the smoke. "Why betray the base? Why betray everyone?" Shaw tilted his head, his lips curling into a faint, almost cruel smile. "Betrayal implies choice, Sergeant. I didn't choose this, I was chosen." Alyssa felt the words sink in. Chosen. Someone higher up had orchestrated everything, the convoy, the breach, the chaos. Her blood ran cold. The attack wasn't random. It wasn't personal. It was strategic, systemic, and terrifyingly calculated. Who's behind this?" she demanded, voice sharp. Shaw's eyes glinted with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. "You'd be surprised how many people wear the same uniform and serve a different agenda. Some of your leaders, your chain of command, they're not what they seem. Orders come from places you don't see, people you can't touch. This was inevitable." Her stomach dropped. The realization hit her like a hammer. Colonel Hayes hadn't just ignored her warning. Someone in the chain of command had allowed this to happen, had possibly planned it. The base, the personnel, the prototype, all part of a larger, hidden objective she couldn't yet comprehend. "Stop talking," she growled, tightening her grip on her rifle. "If you move that prototype out of this vault, there's nothing left to stop you. No one, no base, no country can contain it." Shaw's smile widened, almost sadistic. "That's what makes it fascinating, isn't it? You think you can control it. You think one person, one sergeant, can prevent what's coming. But the truth is far bigger than you imagine." Alyssa's heart pounded. Every training exercise, every drill, every long night on the base had prepared her for crisis, but not for betrayal from within, and not for this level of calculated destruction. The strike team noticed her pause. Two men raised weapons to fire, but Alyssa reacted instinctively, firing precise bursts that knocked them off balance. The firefight erupted again, bullets ricocheting against steel and concrete, sparks dancing with deadly randomness. "Daniels, Ruiz, protect the civilians, I handle Shaw," she yelled. As the others herded the airmen behind cover, Alyssa lunged toward Shaw. He sidestepped, moving with a predator's grace, and ducked behind the partially open vault door. "Don't underestimate me," he called over the firefight. "You might stop me, but you cannot stop what's already begun." She cursed under her breath. The vault was rigged with multiple booby traps and electronic locks. Shaw knew them inside out. Every second she spent trying to reach him risked a catastrophic failure of the containment system. Sparks arced dangerously close to the glowing prototype. Alyssa dove forward, grabbing the doorframe and flipping over a section of twisted metal. The room inside was a disaster zone, wires dangling, monitors smashed, and the faint hum of the prototype growing louder, almost angry. She could see Shaw holding the device, examining it as if it were a living entity. "Rylan," she shouted, racing toward him, "this doesn't have to end like this." He looked at her, eyes distant, almost mournful. "It's already over, Alyssa. You're too late. The first mistakes were made long before today." Her mind reeled. The first mistake. Colonel Hayes ignoring her warning, letting her voice go unheard, allowing the breach to happen. The thought fueled her rage and desperation. She lunged at Shaw, tackling him to the floor. They struggled, each movement a desperate contest of strength, skill, and willpower. Shaw twisted, almost effortlessly, sending Alyssa sliding across the floor. Sparks from exposed wiring kissed the edges of her uniform. She lunged again, slamming into him, pinning him against the vault wall. "Where's the backup? Who's giving the orders?" she demanded, panting. Shaw's eyes gleamed with a mix of triumph and sorrow. "You'll never know, at least not yet. By the time you find out, it will be too late." Alyssa's pulse raced. The impossible truth settled like a stone in her stomach. The attack was far larger than the base, far larger than Shaw, and it had been orchestrated with chilling precision. They weren't just fighting a few rogue soldiers, they were fighting a system that had manipulated everyone. The prototype pulsed more intensely, wires sparking dangerously. Ruiz ran in, having stabilized it temporarily, and Alyssa's heart leapt. They had bought a few seconds. Shaw's expression darkened. "You really believe you can win here? One sergeant against a plan that's been decades in motion. Foolish." Alyssa's jaw clenched. "I don't care about decades, I care about right now. And right now you stop or you die here." He laughed softly, almost regretfully. "So naive. The prototype, you can't contain it. Even if you destroy me, someone else will finish this. The first mistake was letting anyone think they could stop it." The words struck her like lightning. It wasn't just Shaw, it wasn't just the convoy, it wasn't just the base. The first mistake wasn't hers, it was systemic. The warning ignored. The failure of command. The creation of a chain reaction that could unravel everything. But Alyssa refused to surrender to despair. She gritted her teeth, surged forward, and slammed Shaw into the floor. Their struggle was brutal, echoing off the walls. Sparks flew as they collided with exposed steel, and the glow of the prototype cast erratic, frightening shadows across the room. Then the impossible happened. One of Shaw's men tried to intervene, but Alyssa's reflexes were unmatched. She disarmed him in a single motion, sending him sprawling across the floor. Shaw froze, realizing Alyssa had gained the upper hand. Her rifle was leveled at him, hands steady despite the chaos. Her voice was icy, unyielding. "This ends now," she said, her words cutting through the smoke, fire, and alarms. Shaw's expression faltered, the first hint of fear, or perhaps calculation, flickering across his face. "Even if you stop me, they'll finish it. The first mistake was never yours to correct, and the price will be paid." Alyssa's stomach dropped. The weight of his words was undeniable. The breach, the prototype, the chaos, it was bigger than any one person. But she didn't hesitate. Adrenaline and duty propelled her forward. She couldn't fix the past mistakes. She couldn't undo the betrayal. But she could act now. The impossible truth was clear. Falcon Ridge was under siege not just by Shaw, not just by rogue attackers, but by a system so corrupt, so far-reaching, that even victory here might only be a temporary reprieve. Alyssa steadied her grip on her rifle, her gaze locked on Shaw. "Maybe I can't stop everything," she whispered to herself, "but I can stop you." The glow of the prototype flickered dangerously. Sparks arced across the room. Shaw's men were disoriented, the chaos turning against them. Alyssa inhaled sharply, readying herself for the confrontation that could determine the fate of the base. And for a fleeting second, she realized something terrifying. This battle was far from over, and the real enemy hadn't even revealed itself yet. The base was crumbling. Smoke and fire roared through corridors and hallways, and the shrill alarms of Falcon Ridge were drowned out by the roar of explosions and the metallic screech of twisting steel. Alyssa Ward's boots pounded against debris-strewn floors as she navigated the chaos, guiding the remaining survivors with ruthless precision. Every corner held unseen threats, every shadow a potential attacker, every second a heartbeat closer to catastrophe. The breach had escalated far beyond the vault. While Alyssa and her team fought Shaw and his strike team, other intruders had infiltrated multiple wings. The barracks were compromised, the engineering labs reduced to smoking rubble, and the perimeter defenses, once the pride of Falcon Ridge, had been obliterated. Smoke billowed from the shattered fences, the metal gates twisted like molten wax under the heat of fire started by explosives planted earlier. Daniel's blood smeared on his cheek, jogged beside Alyssa. "Ward, we're losing the base. Reinforcements, they're not here yet. The outer defenses, they're gone. Half the personnel are either trapped or casualties." Her jaw clenched. She had anticipated chaos, but nothing had prepared her for this scale of devastation. Falcon Ridge was bleeding, and every second they delayed allowed Shaw and his team to execute their mission with brutal precision. "Keep moving," Alyssa barked, voice cutting through smoke and shrieks of fear. "Focus on the prototype. That's priority one. Civilian personnel follow, but the prototype, do not let it leave Falcon Ridge." They turned a corner into the main atrium and Alyssa's heart dropped. The once pristine hall was a battlefield. Fires burned across the ceiling, pillars of black smoke rising toward shattered skylights. Glass rained from above. Shaw's men moved like ghosts in the inferno, directing a large transport vehicle, rigged with explosives and shielding, toward the vault. Alyssa swore under her breath. "They're moving it out," she hissed, motioning for Daniels and Ruiz to follow her. "We intercept now or it's gone." They sprinted through debris, ducking under burning beams and leaping over shattered consoles. Bullets ricocheted off walls, pinging dangerously close, while the faint hum of the prototype inside the transport was an almost palpable heartbeat of danger. As they neared the vault, another explosion shook the building violently. Alyssa was thrown to the ground, scraping her shoulder against concrete. Pain flared sharply, but adrenaline pushed her forward. The vault's reinforced doors, already weakened from Shaw's earlier tampering, began to buckle further under the heat and pressure. Sparks erupted from exposed conduits as the transport vehicle's engine roared to life. "Damn it," she yelled, rising to her feet. "It's moving too fast." Daniels and Ruiz followed, their eyes wide with terror. "Ward, we can't stop it alone. It's armored, and those men, they're not stopping for anyone." Alyssa's mind raced. There was no reinforcements, no outside help yet, and the base itself was on the verge of collapse. Falcon Ridge was falling, and the prototype, the device that could shift the balance of power, was about to be taken away from them. She turned her head and saw it. A secondary group of attackers breaking through the upper floors, advancing with a calculated method. Fire rained down from above as structural beams groaned and collapsed. The base wasn't just under attack, it was imploding from multiple points simultaneously. "Daniels," she shouted, grabbing his arm. "We split. I take the prototype convoy. You secure civilians and contain the upper floors." He hesitated, his eyes wide with fear. "Ward, you can't." "No time to argue," she snapped. "Move." With that, she bolted toward the main transport vehicle. Sparks and smoke filled her path. Her rifle was ready, every muscle coiled for action. The transport, reinforced and armored, had already begun rolling down the scorched tarmac toward the outer gate. Its engine roared like a beast, tires shredding concrete and debris underfoot. Alyssa's team had no time to think, only act. She fired precise bursts, bullets pinging off the vehicle's metal plating, sparks flying. Shaw's men returned fire from behind the convoy, ducking and weaving with lethal coordination. Through the haze, Alyssa glimpsed Shaw himself, moving with the calm precision of a man who had orchestrated everything from the shadows. He glanced back at her, lips curling into a faint smile. "You really think you can stop this, Ward?" he called over the roar of the chaos. "Even if you succeed, Falcon Ridge is already lost." Her stomach dropped, but she refused to hesitate. "I don't care about lost," she shouted back. "I care about stopping you." The chase was a blur of fire, smoke, and debris. Alyssa sprinted alongside the moving convoy, dodging sparks and flying fragments from nearby explosions. The heat was intense, almost suffocating, but she pressed on. Every second counted. Every step could mean life or death. As they neared the outer gate, Alyssa noticed movement on the perimeter. Shaw had anticipated this. Explosives had been planted at key structural points, and any misstep could collapse sections of the fence or ignite fuel lines nearby. The air smelled of smoke and molten metal, and she realized with horror that a single wrong shot could trigger a chain reaction. "Ruiz, cover me," she yelled. "Daniels, get the civilians to the lower bunkers." The team split. Alyssa pressed forward alone, focusing solely on the prototype convoy. She fired at the rear tires of the vehicle, trying to disable it without triggering an explosion. Sparks erupted, tires screeched, but the armored truck continued to move, each rotation of the wheels bringing it closer to the edge of Falcon Ridge. Then came the moment that froze her blood. One of Shaw's men fired a high-caliber round directly at the containment unit. Alyssa dove, firing again, but the bullet struck the edge of the prototype. A blinding pulse of light surged from the device as it began to destabilize. Sparks flew, wires sizzled, and the faint hum grew into a deafening roar. "No," she screamed, diving over a chunk of debris as the vehicle lurched violently. The ground beneath Falcon Ridge shook. Explosions ripped through multiple wings simultaneously. Structural beams twisted and collapsed, sending walls and ceilings crashing down. Screams echoed in the chaos. Civilians, airmen, and even some of Shaw's men were thrown to the ground. Alyssa scrambled back to her feet, adrenaline blinding her to pain. She saw Ruiz, pinned under debris but still conscious, working frantically to stabilize the prototype. "Ward, I almost got it," he shouted over the chaos. Shaw appeared beside the vehicle, weapon raised, a cruel smirk on his face. "Give up, Ward, it's already over. Falcon Ridge falls today." Alyssa lunged. The two collided in a violent struggle, grappling over the device as sparks flew around them. She felt the heat on her skin, the pulse of the prototype growing stronger, threatening to overload. "You underestimated me," she shouted, throwing Shaw off and pulling the containment device free. Sparks arced dangerously as the convoy swerved uncontrollably, hitting a fallen section of wall. The reinforced vehicle crashed, tires shredded, and Shaw's men were thrown to the ground. For a fleeting moment, Alyssa allowed herself to breathe. The prototype was still in her hands. Shaw was down. The immediate threat had been neutralized. But the cost was devastating. Falcon Ridge was in flames. Fires raged unchecked. Structural collapses had trapped personnel. The base, her home, her responsibility, was crumbling around her. And far beyond the walls, the attackers' network remained intact. The convoy had been neutralized, but the larger plan, the system behind Shaw, was still in motion. Alyssa stood among the smoking rubble, chest heaving, arms shaking, eyes scanning the destruction. She had won this fight, but she could feel the larger war looming. Someone, somewhere, had orchestrated this from beyond the base walls. Falcon Ridge had fallen, not entirely but enough, and the nightmare was far from over. She looked at the destroyed perimeter, the scorched labs, the injured personnel, and the faint glow of the prototype, still pulsing in her hands. A single thought hammered through her mind. The first mistake had been ignored, and the consequences were catastrophic. And now she realized the next phase was coming. Someone higher, someone smarter, someone colder would ensure the fall of Falcon Ridge wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Alyssa Ward gritted her teeth. She had survived, but she knew one truth with absolute clarity. The fight was far from over. The real enemy had yet to reveal itself. And when it did, she would be ready. The remains of Falcon Ridge smoldered in the early dawn, the acrid smell of smoke and scorched metal hanging heavy in the air. Fires still burned in pockets across the base, and the wail of distant sirens cut through the chaos like a warning of things yet to come. Alyssa Ward stood among the rubble, chest heaving, hands still gripping the prototype. Her uniform was torn, streaked with soot, and her boots were coated in dust and debris, but she was alive, and for the moment the prototype was safe. She could feel it thrumming in her hands, an almost imperceptible vibration that mirrored her own pulse. Every instinct screamed that danger wasn't over. Shaw had been neutralized, but he hadn't acted alone. Every move, every calculation, every exploit that had brought the base to the brink of destruction had come from someone higher, someone smart, someone hidden. Lieutenant Daniels approached, dragging Ruiz along, who winced from a deep gash across his shoulder. Ward, we held the prototype. Shaw's down, but the base. His voice broke as he gestured to the smoking wreckage. It's gone. Parts of the east wing collapsed. Multiple casualties. Alyssa swallowed hard, nodding grimly. She had known the risks, but the devastation hit differently when the smoke cleared. Falcon Ridge, a symbol of discipline, strategy, and military pride, had been reduced to rubble in hours. She couldn't help but replay Shaw's words. Even if you stop me, they'll finish it. She lifted the prototype carefully. He wasn't acting alone, she said. There's someone else, someone orchestrating this from above. And if we don't find them, Falcon Ridge falling will just be the beginning. Daniel's jaw tightened. Do you think it's someone in command, someone higher than Hayes? Alyssa's eyes narrowed. It has to be. The precision, the planning. No one outside would have access to this level of intel, and someone ignored my warning for a reason. They wanted this to happen. They moved carefully through the wreckage, avoiding collapsed beams, smoldering fires, and exposed wires. Civilians and surviving personnel huddled in makeshift safe zones, shaken, some crying, some nursing injuries. Every eye seemed to look toward Alyssa, silently asking how this nightmare had happened, and why. They reached the command center, half-collapsed but still operational. Monitors flickered weakly, showing distant perimeter breaches that hadn't been neutralized. Alyssa's stomach dropped. Shaw had been part of a bigger plan, and it hadn't ended with the prototype or Falcon Ridge. Her radio crackled. A voice, calm, authoritative, unfamiliar, came through. Sergeant Ward, it said, congratulations, you've survived Falcon Ridge so far. Alyssa froze, instincts sharpening. She gripped her rifle tighter. Who is this? She demanded, scanning the damaged control room. Someone you know, the voice replied, smooth and calculated. Someone whose vision for the future you've been part of unwittingly, but your loyalty has been tested, and you failed. Yet here you are, alive, a credit to yourself if temporary. Alyssa's mind raced. Who are you? What do you want? The voice chuckled softly, almost amused. I want what all great minds want, Sergeant. Control, precision, order. Falcon Ridge was an experiment, an obstacle to eliminate. And you've done well to preserve the prototype, though it's only delayed what's inevitable. Daniel stepped closer, frowning. This is insane, someone manipulating everything from the shadows. Who has that kind of power? Someone you would never suspect, the voice said. Someone in plain sight. Someone whose decisions shape entire operations, whose orders are law, yet whose conscience is flexible. You trusted them. They trusted you. And the first mistake was ignoring the warning signs. Alyssa felt a cold wave of dread. Every chain of command she had relied upon, every policy, every protocol, they could have been compromised. Falcon Ridge had been engineered to fail, and she had been a player in someone else's plan all along. "Show yourself," she demanded, voice unwavering despite the fire in her chest. "Stop hiding behind words, face me." There was a pause. Then through the flickering security feeds she saw him, Colonel Hayes. His face appeared on a cracked monitor, calm, composed, almost serene amid the destruction. But the way he looked at her, the subtle confidence in his eyes, was wrong. "Colonel," she whispered, disbelief cutting through the smoke. "Ah, Sergeant Ward," Hayes said smoothly, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I see you survived. Impressive. Too bad the base did not." Alyssa's stomach sank. Every hesitation he had shown during the warnings, every decision that had cost precious time, it wasn't incompetence. It was deliberate, calculated. The betrayal burned hotter than the fires around them. You orchestrated this?" she asked, voice trembling but filled with fury. "I ensured the plan proceeded as intended," Hayes said calmly. "Shaw was a necessary agent, the prototype was a catalyst, and Falcon Ridge was always meant to fall. Some lessons must be learned the hard way. You failed to see the bigger picture." Her hands shook, rage mingling with disbelief. "You risked everyone's lives. Airmen, civilians of people I swore to protect." "Collateral damage," Hayes said with chilling detachment. "A small price to pay for the future we must secure, and yet you've managed to preserve the prototype. That was unexpected, a minor inconvenience, but it won't last." Alyssa's mind raced. The prototype, the key to the next phase, was still in her possession. And yet Hayes' words hinted at a much larger, hidden network of power and influence, ready to reclaim it. "You won't succeed," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I won't let you anymore." Hayes chuckled softly. "You already have. Falcon Ridge is lost. And the prototype, well, let's just say its fate is inevitable. The true consequences of your actions, Sergeant Ward, will unfold whether you intervene or not. Some truths are impossible to stop." Alyssa's jaw tightened. She knew she had seconds, maybe minutes, before Hayes' next move began. And if the prototype fell into the wrong hands, the world beyond Falcon Ridge would pay the price. She gritted her teeth, realizing the impossible truth. This fight was bigger than her, bigger than Falcon Ridge, bigger than any single mission she had ever faced. But she refused to give in. She could not now, not after everything. Alyssa turned to Daniels and Ruiz. "We've survived this long, but the real enemy is just beginning to reveal himself. Prepare yourselves. Everything changes now." Daniels swallowed hard, eyes wide. "Ward, what do we do?" She tightened her grip on the prototype, her gaze steady. "We fight, no matter the cost, because if we do," she paused, the weight of truth settling in. "If we don't, the world beyond Falcon Ridge dies before we even get the chance to stop it." The monitor flickered, Hayes' face lingering for a final moment. Then he vanished. Alyssa exhaled slowly, adrenaline mixing with fear, anger, and determination. Falcon Ridge was lost, Shaw was down, but the hidden enemy remained, orchestrating chaos from the shadows, untouchable, watching, planning. And she knew one chilling fact. The next choice she made could determine not only her life, but the fate of countless others. The prototype pulsed in her hands like a heartbeat of doom. The fires around them raged, and the unseen enemy waited. The real battle had only just begun. Falcon Ridge lay in ruins. Smoke spiraled into the pale dawn sky, a haunting reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. Alyssa Ward moved through the wreckage with purposeful determination, every muscle taut, every nerve alert. The prototype pulsed faintly in her hands, a quiet but persistent heartbeat of danger, an energy that could either save the world or destroy it. The destruction around her was staggering. Crumpled walls, collapsed ceilings, scorched earth, and twisted metal told the story of a base brought to its knees. Survivors crawled from the rubble, some weeping, some trembling, others too stunned to move. Their eyes met hers with a mixture of gratitude and fear. Alyssa knew the weight of their expectations, the unspoken question, Could she finish what Shaw and Hayes had started? Daniels and Ruiz flanked her, both exhausted, bloodied, and shaken, but still ready. Alyssa could feel their resolve. They had survived impossible odds together, and now the final confrontation awaited. The radio crackled. Static first, then Hayes' voice, calm, controlled, and almost omnipresent. "Sergeant Ward," he said, smooth and measured, "congratulations on surviving the breach. But survival is only temporary. The prototype is only the beginning. The world will bend to those with foresight, and foresight is mine." Alyssa ground her teeth, clutching the prototype tighter. "Colonel Hayes," she said, voice steady but icy, "your reign ends today. Not just here, but anywhere you think you have control. This stops now." Hayes chuckled, a low, chilling sound. "Bold words from a sergeant who still doesn't see the bigger picture, but very well. Come find me, face your judgment." The location was clear. The outer command bunker, still partially intact, guarded by automated turrets and reinforced blast doors. Alyssa and her team moved carefully, using the debris as cover. Every step was calculated. Every second counted. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing a foe who had orchestrated every failure, every misstep, and every danger they had endured over the past 48 hours. The approach was perilous. Fires roared around them, and the heat made breathing difficult. Automated turrets on the outer perimeter activated as they neared, scanning for heat signatures. Alyssa and Ruiz ducked behind a charred beam. "Leave the turrets to me," Alyssa whispered. She tapped into her training, overriding the turret system via a portable terminal she had retrieved from the control center. Sparks flew as the systems overloaded, shutting down the automated defenses. "Good work," Daniels murmured. "Let's hope Hayes didn't anticipate this." Alyssa didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed ahead, on the reinforced steel doors of the bunker. Inside was the man who had betrayed them, the architect of chaos, and the one person who could turn the prototype into a weapon capable of unprecedented destruction. The doors were locked electronically, but Alyssa's fingers danced across the control panel, bypassing the security protocols with speed born of necessity. Sparks flew as the system struggled, then gave way. The doors groaned open, revealing a long hallway illuminated by cold, white light. Hayes was there, waiting, calm, composed, and eerily confident. "Ah, Sergeant Ward," he said, hands folded, eyes piercing. "You've done well to survive, but this is where it ends. The prototype belongs to the future, not to you." Alyssa's jaw clenched. "The future belongs to no one who would destroy it to gain control. This ends now, Hayes. You don't get another chance." He smiled faintly. "You misunderstand. You think you can defeat me with courage and bullets. I've spent decades orchestrating events you can't even begin to comprehend. Falcon Ridge was the first act, and yet you've survived to the finale. Admirable." The confrontation was inevitable. Alyssa moved forward, weapon ready, prototype in hand, eyes locked on Hayes. He gestured toward the bunker's interior, and suddenly the floor shifted. An automated defense mechanism activated. Panels slid open, revealing laser grids and pressure-sensitive traps. Alyssa cursed under her breath. "He planned this," she whispered. "Every step, every move, every escape route." Ruiz and Daniels flanked her, taking positions beside two pillars that provided cover. Bullets and small explosives could come from any direction. The bunker was a death trap, engineered for a single victor, Hayes. Alyssa pressed forward, carefully navigating the laser grid. Every step had to be precise. One misstep could trigger a lethal charge. Hayes watched, almost detached, analyzing her like a chess player observing an opponent. "I admire your perseverance, Ward," he said, "but perseverance alone won't save you." "Maybe not," she replied, jaw tight, "but courage can." The grid ended. Alyssa ducked behind a console as automated turrets inside the bunker engaged, firing. Sparks flew as she returned fire, disabling the systems one by one with calculated shots. Daniels and Ruiz provided cover, neutralizing guards Hayes had planted inside. The noise was deafening, echoes of gunfire, explosions, and alarms blending into a chaotic symphony of war. Finally, they reached Hayes. Alyssa raised the prototype in one hand and her rifle in the other. Hayes' expression was unreadable, a mix of calm calculation and faint amusement. "This is it," she said, voice low but fierce. "End of the line." Hayes stepped forward slowly, hands raised slightly as if in surrender, but his eyes betrayed him. "Do it," he said softly. "Destroy me, destroy the prototype, either way, history will remember Falcon Ridge as the failure of your generation." Alyssa's chest tightened. "No," she said, "history will remember those who protected it." She lunged. The struggle was immediate. Hayes was strong, trained, and ruthless. Their hands clashed over the prototype, sparks arcing from the device as wires threatened to fry. Daniels and Ruiz engaged guards in the background, the sound of gunfire echoing off the walls. Hayes twisted, sending Alyssa skidding across the floor. The prototype pulsed violently, threatening to overload. Time seemed to slow, every second a heartbeat a potential explosion. "You can't stop progress," Hayes shouted, voice almost triumphant. "I can stop you," Alyssa replied, gritting her teeth. "I'll do whatever it takes." She dove, grabbing the prototype and twisting it free from Hayes' grasp. Sparks erupted from the device, the hum growing deafening. Hayes lunged, but Alyssa rolled to the side, her movement precise, fueled by sheer determination and adrenaline. With a final, decisive motion, she activated the prototype's containment failsafe, designed for emergencies, untested under these conditions. A blinding pulse of energy filled the room, and Hayes was thrown backward, shielding his eyes. The device stabilized. Hayes lay on the floor, stunned, breathing heavily, realizing the scope of his failure. Alyssa stood over him, eyes burning with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "It's over," she said, voice low but unwavering. "Falcon Ridge, the prototype, everything you plan to destroy stops here." Hayes' lips twisted into a bitter smile. "You may have won the battle, Ward, but the war is far from over." Alyssa didn't flinch. She had survived betrayal, chaos, and impossible odds. She had protected the prototype, saved the base personnel who remained, and confronted the mastermind behind the destruction. The world might still face challenges, but she had ensured that Hayes' immediate plans and his control had been ended. Outside, the smoke began to clear. Rescue teams arrived, securing the perimeter and evacuating survivors. The ruins of Falcon Ridge stood as a testament to both destruction and resilience. Alyssa watched as personnel carried the wounded to safety. Daniels and Ruiz approached, exhaustion and relief etched on their faces. "You did it," Daniels said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "No," Alyssa replied, gaze fixed on the rising sun. "We did it. Everyone who survived, everyone who fought, that's what matters." Hayes, he underestimated people who refused to give up. The prototype pulsed gently in her hands, now stable, no longer a heartbeat of impending doom, but a symbol of survival, ingenuity, and courage. Alyssa exhaled, her body trembling from the strain but her spirit unbroken. Falcon Ridge had fallen, but it had survived through the courage of its people, the resilience of those who refused to surrender. And though the hidden enemy may still linger in the shadows, Alyssa Ward knew one unshakable truth. The fight for what was right would never end, and neither would her vigilance. The sun rose fully over the smoking ruins, casting light on the survivors, the base, and the woman who had turned chaos into hope. Falcon Ridge had fallen, but its defenders had risen.